know who I am?" That was the last thing Jonathan Brooks said before the sound rang through that hallway. Sharp, flat, wrong. The kind of sound that does not belong in a place where people come to bring life into the world, where the walls smell of antiseptic and new beginnings, where the worst thing that is supposed to happen is a long wait and bad coffee. Naomi's hand went to her face. Her other hand, the oldest instinct she had, older than thought, older than fear, went to her stomach. Nobody moved. Not the nurses, not the patients in that waiting area who had gone completely, unnaturally still. The way people go still when the world breaks one of its unspoken rules right in front of them. Not the young receptionist behind the desk who had done absolutely nothing wrong except ask Jonathan Brooks to wait his turn like every other human being in that building. The ultrasound photos were on the floor. Her daughter's face. The first image she had ever seen of her, face down on the cold clinic tiles. And Jonathan was already straightening his cuff, like it was over, like he had just won. He had absolutely no idea, because 40 feet behind him, through a door that requires a key card to open, a door that leads to rooms that do not appear on any public floor plan, a door that had just quietly and deliberately opened, one man stepped into that hallway. No guards, no entourage, no noise, just presence. The kind of presence that has never once needed to announce itself. He did not look at Jonathan. He did not look at Naomi. He looked at the security camera mounted above the reception desk. One look, 3 seconds, and the most dangerous Korean mafia boss in the city already knew everything he needed to know. Jonathan Brooks had spent 15 years believing he understood how power worked. He had never once, not for a single day of his life, been in the same room with it. Until now. Before we go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you are watching this from. I want to see every city, every state, every country in these comments. New York, Lagos, London, Seoul, Atlanta, Toronto, Houston. Wherever you are sitting right now, drop your location below. Let's see how far this story travels. And if you are new here, welcome. You picked the right day to show up, because what that man does in the next 18 hours is going to dismantle everything Jonathan Brooks ever built. Brick by brick, account by account. And the twist hidden inside this story? The secret that has been sitting in plain sight since the very first scene. I promise you, nobody sees it coming. Not Jonathan, not Naomi, and not you. Stay with me. Here is what nobody tells you about surviving a bad marriage. It does not look like surviving from the outside. From the outside, it looks completely fine. She looks like a woman who has everything together. Prenatal vitamins on the counter, hospital bag half-packed by the door. A smile so practiced, it stopped feeling like effort somewhere around year 2. Naomi Brooks is 8 months pregnant, and she is the most capable person in every room she walks into. She knows it. She just stopped letting people see it. A long time ago, she made that choice and never looked back. Because letting people see it made Jonathan uncomfortable. And an uncomfortable Jonathan was something she had learned, very early and very thoroughly, not to create. She arrives at the clinic alone that morning. Jonathan is meeting her there, he said. He is already 20 minutes late. She stopped being surprised by that somewhere around year 2 as well. She checks in at the front desk, gets her paperwork, finds a seat in the waiting area. And then she does what she always does in quiet moments. She looks for who needs help. Across the room, a teenage girl, maybe 17. First pregnancy, you can tell by the way she is holding herself. That specific combination of terrified and trying not to show it. Sitting completely alone, hands twisted together in her lap, staring at the floor like it might give her an answer nobody else has. Naomi moves her chair closer. She does not make a production of it. She just sits near enough that the girl knows she is not invisible. She asks her name, talks to her softly, stays with her until the girl's name is called. She watches her walk through that door a little steadier than she was before. That is Naomi Brooks. That is who she is at her core. And that single instinct, that reflex to step towards someone else's pain, is the exact reason her entire life is about to be saved. She just does not know it yet. Jonathan Brooks has never once in his life been told he has to wait like everybody else. Not because he is extraordinarily powerful, not because he is extraordinarily wealthy, but because he figured out early, very early, that if you use the right tone and project the right level of certainty, most people will move out of your way just to avoid the friction. He built his entire personality around that one discovery. He arrives 12 minutes late. He does not apologize for this. He walks through the clinic entrance with the energy of a man who believes his arrival should have already been anticipated. He scans the waiting room, spots Naomi, gives her a nod that somehow manages to communicate both acknowledgement and irritation at the same time. Then he goes straight to the reception desk. The receptionist looks up. Her name tag reads Gia. She is 23 years old, 3 weeks into this job, still learning the names of the senior nurses. She has warm eyes and careful hands and a smile she has been working hard to keep professional all morning. She has absolutely no idea what is walking toward her. Jonathan explains, not asks, explains, that his wife has an appointment and he expects them to be seen immediately. Gia checks the system carefully. She tells him, as apologetically as she knows how, that the appointment has been moved 20 minutes due to an emergency with another patient. She is so sorry for the inconvenience. Jonathan's expression does not change. That is the warning sign. The one Naomi recognizes from across the room immediately. That specific stillness that means he has decided this person needs to be taught something. He leans forward on the desk. He begins to speak in the voice that is worse than shouting. Gia's careful hands begin to shake. Naomi is already out of her chair. But what she does not know, what nobody in that waiting room knows, is who Gia really is. And that secret is about to change everything. Naomi has redirected Jonathan's anger so many times it has become muscle memory. She knows the moves, she knows the tone to use, the angle to approach from, the exact words that de-escalate without making him feel challenged in public. She has spent 3 years learning the geography of his ego like a map she never wanted and cannot put down. She steps forward, touches his arm, begins the familiar choreography. Jonathan shakes her hand off without looking at her. And something in Naomi, something that has been very quietly, very patiently running out for a very long time, goes completely still. She looks at Gia behind the desk. The girl's eyes are bright, her hands are still shaking. She is doing everything right, staying professional, keeping her voice level, apologizing for something that is not her fault, and Jonathan is leaning over that desk, reducing her to nothing. Every single person in that waiting area is staring at their phones pretending this is not happening. Naomi steps between them, not dramatically, not with a speech. She moves her body into the space between them, between her husband and the young woman who is shaking. She looks at Jonathan directly. She uses a voice she has not used with him in 3 years. Quiet, clear, immovable. That is enough. The waiting room goes completely silent. Jonathan turns to face her slowly. She sees the decision being made behind his eyes, the line being crossed, the moment that cannot be taken back. Do you know who I am? He is not asking Gia anymore. The sound hits before the pain does. The ultrasound photos are on the floor, and 40 feet away a door is opening. What walks through it will change every single life in that hallway forever. Nobody moves. The waiting room holds the specific silence of people who have witnessed something that has broken an unspoken rule of the world, the kind of silence that has weight, the kind that rings. Jonathan is already talking, low, controlled. That voice that means the moment is over as far as he is concerned. Telling Naomi she brought this on herself, telling her they will discuss it at home, moving through the clinic like none of it exists, the frozen faces, the phones gripped too tight, the nurse with her hand over her mouth. None of it. The private ward door at the end of the hall opens. He is not tall in the way that draws attention. He is still in the way that commands it. Dark coat, Korean, mid-40s. The kind of face that has seen enough of the world to have stopped being surprised by most of it, but whose eyes right now are the coldest thing in the room. He does not rush. He does not raise his voice. He does not even look at Jonathan. He looks at Gia behind the reception desk. Something passes between them. A look so fast that only someone watching closely would catch it. A look that carries more information than most conversations. A look that says, "I see what happened. I am here. It is already done." Then his eyes go to the security camera above the desk. One look, 3 seconds. He reaches into his coat, takes out his phone, dials. 2 words. Quiet. Absolute. Find everything. He ends the call. He looks at Naomi, not with pity, not with shock, with the specific attention of a man who has already made a decision and is now simply confirming the details. Jonathan still has not looked at him. This is his last moment of not knowing. If this story already has you locked in, if you can feel exactly where this is going and you are here for every second of it, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. I tell stories like this every single week, and you do not want to miss what is coming. Hit subscribe. I will be right here. Jonathan finally turns around, and when he sees the face of the man standing at the end of that hall, something happens to Jonathan Brooks that nobody in that room has ever seen before. All of that certainty, all of that control, all of that blazer and confidence and 15 years of believing he was the most dangerous person in every room he walked into. It leaves his body like air out of a punctured tire, because Jonathan Brooks knows that face, and he knows that he has just made the single worst mistake of his entire life. Here is the thing about men like Jonathan Brooks. They spend so long being the most dangerous person in their own world. They forget how to recognize when they have wandered into someone else's. He files the formal complaint from the clinic parking lot. Lawyer on speakerphone. Naomi sitting completely silent in the passenger seat with her hands still pressed to her face. He dictates with the fluency and confidence of a man who has won every confrontation he has ever started, because he has only ever started confrontations with people who had less power than him. His lawyer tells him the case is strong. Jonathan believes this because Jonathan has always believed his lawyers when they tell him what he wants to hear. That evening, he slides the separation document across the kitchen table, the one he has had prepared for 3 weeks. His contingency, his weapon, designed to leave Naomi with absolutely nothing. No assets, no access to their joint accounts. A custody arrangement his lawyer called aggressive but defensible. He tells her to think carefully. He tells her this is what happens when she embarrasses him in public. He goes to bed, completely satisfied with how the day has ended. His phone receives an automated notification at 11:47 at night. Unusual activity on his primary account. He silences it without reading it fully and goes to sleep. His business partner calls at midnight. Jonathan does not answer. His lawyer calls at 12:30. Jonathan silences it. At 2 in the morning, a number he does not recognize calls. He answers, irritated, half asleep, ready to end this quickly. The voice on the other end says 4 words. Jonathan sits straight up in the dark. Those 4 words are the last warning Jonathan Brooks will ever receive. And when morning comes, he is going to discover exactly how much he has already lost. And it will break him. Let's go back. Back to the clinic. Back to the reception desk. Back to the moment those careful hands started shaking. Because Gia is not just a receptionist. Her full name is Park Gia, 23 years old, youngest of 3 siblings. She works here under her mother's maiden name. Her older brother asked her to keep a low profile, stay quiet, get on her feet. Her older brother's name is Muyol Park, billionaire, Korean mafia boss, the man behind Vane Capital Holdings, property, finance, infrastructure across 3 countries. Clean on the surface, immovable underneath. The kind of man whose name makes bank managers answer on the first ring at midnight. And the woman who stepped between his little sister and the man who was trying to reduce her to nothing. The pregnant woman in the white dress whose ultrasound photos ended up on the floor. Just did the one thing in the world that guaranteed Muyol Park would burn Jonathan Brooks's entire life to the ground. She protected his family. Find everything, he said into the phone. By the time he finishes his last hour with his mother, holding her hand, drinking bad vending machine coffee, being for one more afternoon simply a son, His phone contains every detail of Jonathan Brooks's life that exists in any database anywhere. He reads it in the car. His face does not change. He makes 3 calls, 11 minutes total. Jonathan's world takes 7 hours to fall completely apart. But buried inside Jonathan's financial records is a secret so devastating, something he has been hiding from Naomi for 2 full years, that when she finds out, it will not just break her heart, it will set her completely free. Naomi wakes at 3 in the morning. Jonathan left hours ago after she refused to sign the separation document. He slammed the door with the controlled precision of a man saving his real anger for later. The document is still on the kitchen table. Her go bag is in the bedroom closet, half-packed. Started 3 months ago, added to quietly and carefully ever since. She told herself it was just in case. She picks up her phone. There is a transfer notification on her personal account. The one Jonathan does not know exists. The one she opened 18 months ago at a branch across town with $400 she had been saving in cash. The transfer is from an account she does not recognize. $40,000. No message, no name, just a timestamp and a reference number. She sits at that kitchen table in the dark for a long time. Then she clicks the attached document. It is not a message from Muyol. It is a financial record. Jonathan's private account. The one nobody was supposed to find. The one Muyol's people pulled when they found everything. It shows payments, consistent, monthly, for 2 years. A second apartment across town. A second life, a second woman, and a pregnancy. 3 months further along than Naomi's. She reads it twice. She closes the app. She sits with the specific silence of a woman whose world has just been completely rearranged. Not destroyed, rearranged. Because somewhere underneath the pain is the clean, cold feeling of finally understanding everything that never made sense. She gets up. She finishes packing the bag. She walks out of that apartment without looking back. She has no idea that the morning waiting for her is going to give her something she stopped believing she deserved a long time ago. Safety. Real. Unshakable. Permanent. Jonathan arrives at his office building at 8 in the morning. He did not sleep. He spent the night making calls that went unanswered and sending emails that bounced back and watching his phone fill with notifications from accounts and systems and partners that are all, simultaneously, impossibly, telling him the same thing. Gone. His key card does not work. The building manager meets him at the entrance, apologetic, unable to hold eye contact, and tells him the lease on the entire floor transferred to a new corporate entity at 6 in the morning. He is welcome to collect his personal belongings under supervision. Jonathan walks into his own office. Muyol is sitting in his chair. Not performing. Not threatening. Simply present. In the specific way of a man who has sat in 1,000 rooms like this and finds them all equally unremarkable because they all end the same way. On the desk, 1 document. On the laptop, the clinic footage playing without sound. Naomi's hand going to her face. Her other hand going to her stomach. The ultrasound photos hitting the floor. Jonathan straightening his cuff. Muyol speaks once. He describes what the document contains. He describes what the alternative looks like. He does not raise his voice. He does not move from the chair. He does not need to do either of those things. Jonathan's lawyer does not answer. His business partner does not answer. His accounts show a balance of 0. The company that had his name on it no longer has his name on it. Jonathan looks at the footage. He watches himself straighten that cuff. He picks up the pen. He signs. He walks out into an ordinary Wednesday morning. Clean light, indifferent city. A man who has ceased to matter to a single person in it. No rain, no drama, just silence. And somewhere across the city, in a clinic room she never expected to feel safe in, Naomi Brooks is about to meet her daughter. The clinic. The private suite. 3 days after the hallway. Naomi's daughter arrives in the early hours of the morning, in the same building where the ultrasound photos fell to the floor, which is now the safest room in the entire city. The nurses who were in that waiting area that day are here on this shift. Nobody arranged that officially. It just happened the way things happen when someone invisible makes sure they do. Gia brings a small plant for the windowsill before her shift starts. She cannot find the right words. She does not need to. Naomi looks at her and understands something she is not ready to say out loud yet. She squeezes her hand. Gia nods. That is enough. In the evening, the room goes quiet. The staff cycle out. Then a knock at the door. A clinic staff member steps in and hands Naomi a small envelope. No name on it. Left at the front desk, they say. Just this. Inside, a card. No letterhead. No signature. 4 words in clean, precise handwriting. She will be safe. Naomi holds that card for a long time. She thinks about a man she has never spoken to, who came to a clinic to sit with his sick mother, who saw what happened in that hallway and made a decision, not out of obligation, not out of strategy, simply because it was wrong and he was there, and he had the power to make it right. She looks at her daughter's face. She gives her a name that belongs to no history and carries no weight. A clean name. A forward name. A name that starts something instead of continuing something. Then quietly, to no one but her daughter, who is too new to understand it and too important not to hear it first, she says her own name. Not Brooks. Her real name. The one she has been carrying underneath everything else, waiting for a moment safe enough to finally say out loud. The moment is now. And one last thing before you go. Go back to the very beginning. Go back to the waiting room. Go back to the teenage girl sitting alone with her hands twisted in her lap. Naomi sat with her. Naomi talked to her. Naomi made sure she did not feel invisible. That girl's name was never mentioned. But if you paid close attention, if you watched the way Gia looked at that girl when she walked through the clinic door, you already know. Some stories do not end. They just find a new generation to protect. Here is what I want you to sit with. Naomi did not survive because she was lucky. She did not survive because she was strong enough, or loud enough, or because she fought back the right way. She survived because of one moment, one instinct, one decision to step in front of someone else's pain when every other person in that hallway looked away. She protected a stranger. And that stranger turned out to be the sister of the most dangerous man in the city. But here is the thing about that. It would not have mattered who Gia was. Naomi did not step forward because she calculated the outcome. She stepped forward because it was wrong, and she was there, and she could not make herself look away. That is the whole story. Not the revenge, not the money, not the man in the dark coat who made 3 phone calls and ended a life in 11 minutes. The whole story is a woman who never stopped being who she was, even inside a marriage that spent 3 years trying to make her someone smaller. Jonathan took everything he could reach. He could not reach that. Some things cannot be taken, only abandoned. And Naomi never abandoned the one thing that mattered. That is what her daughter is going to grow up knowing. That is what she said her own name out loud for. That is hope. If this story stayed with you, if you felt something sitting with Naomi in that hallway, in that kitchen at 3 in the morning, in that delivery room at the end, then you are exactly who this channel was built for. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and tell me where in the world you are watching from. Every day I bring you a story built like this one. Real stakes, real emotion, endings that mean something. You found something worth staying for. I will see you in the next one.